Well, good evening. Thank you for coming here. And if you're a delegate watching by video, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this presentation. This is a response by onmyhonor.net to the Boy Scouts of America, the official presentation that was done to the delegates just recently. And onmyhonor.net is a group of parents, Scoutmasters, Eagle Scouts, donors to Scouting, and alumni who all over the country would like to see the membership standards stay the same and do not want to see open homosexuality in the program. And so some have asked me, who are you and why in the world are you doing all this stuff? Why did you set aside your law practice? Why did you set aside your policy council, your nonprofit, and spend the last 2 months and the next month engaging in this matter? And the reason I've done that is very simple. And that is because I believe that if we change the policy and allow open homosexuality within Scouting, it will fundamentally change it forever. It will devastate the program financially, socially, and it will devastate it legally. And it's not just my feeling. I believe that the evidence and the facts and the legal arguments I'm going to present to you tonight will show that that is the case. Now, a little bit about myself. I live in Orlando, Florida. My name is John Stemberger, and I have a very small law practice. I've practiced in the area of civil trial litigation. I've done commercial litigation, personal injury law, business law, some intellectual property, and I've been a lawyer for about 18 years now. I also run a group called the Florida Family Policy Council. I've been married for 18 years to my wife Olivia, and we have 4 small children under the age of 12. One is a Boy Scout and one is a Cub Scout. And my prayer would be that those boys would go on to be Eagle Scouts, but that remains to be seen. Let's go on. This is going to be a fast-moving presentation. What I'm going to do is I can't show you. You can certainly find the hour-long presentation that was done by the Boy Scout officials. And let me just say this. This is not something, in my opinion, this is being driven by a very few handful of people at the national level. And they're leading this. It's not just an education. They say this is an education phase. This is not merely education. They are selling this. Okay, they are affirmatively selling this. They're advocating for this, and they want this to pass. Now we're going to talk about some of the reasons why they want this to pass, in my opinion. But we want to do all of that. So let's start. Let's give a little history, first of all, behind this. In the year 2000, the United States Supreme Court decided the case of BSA versus Dale. What the Supreme Court said in Dale was that as long as an organization like this is going to take the position that it's their mission to inculcate values and morals and ethics, which is the mission of the Scouts, that it's okay for them to actually deny membership to openly gay men. And so if they retreated from that, if they said that the Scout Oath and the Scout Law was no longer consistent with open homosexuality, then they would lose that association. And what the BSA argued was that to be clean, to be reverent, to be morally straight was inconsistent with open homosexuality. And so the Supreme Court says that's constitutional, and they affirm the Scouts' right to deny membership to open and avowed homosexuals. Now, after that had happened, obviously there was some controversy in the country. Gay rights activists began to criticize the BSA. And so that brings us up to BSA versus Dale was decided in the year 2000. But obviously, history goes on, and about 10 years later, because of increasing pressure and increasing controversy, the BSA commissioned a 2-year study by 11 volunteer members, and they took a full 2 years to do a comprehensive study. And in July of 2012, a BSA spokesperson said that this is, quote, the absolute best policy for the Boy Scouts of America. The absolute best policy for the Boy Scouts of America. That was last summer. Now the question is, how do we get from that to the statement you're going to hear tonight by Nathan Rosenberg, who's the council president of the Orange County Council in California, that now this resolution is really the best option for Scouting. This is in less than a year we have the same organization making diametrically different statements. How do we get there? And that's what we're going to explore today. The presentation last week that took place was by Wayne Brock, who is the Chief Scout Executive, he was on the call remotely. Wayne Perry, who you also saw there. Nathan Rosenberg is the Vice President for Marketing for National Executive Committee. He used to be on the Orange County Council. He is also a specialist in marketing and in kind of selling products and kind of pitching things. He has a company that does this. Interestingly enough, he has been paid quite a handsome consulting fee in order to actually promote this to the Scout membership. Additionally, he's also on the board as well, which I find a bit unusual because normally board members are not supposed to have a financial interest in the outcome of a matter, but he does have those dual roles. Tom Buffenbarger, who you'll hear from tonight briefly, is in the northeastern area, but he is the Assistant Treasurer for the National Executive Committee. And then Lyle Knight, who you'll hear a quote from tonight as well, is the Vice President for Human Resources.
Wow. I want to close with some thoughts. This is not anyone's personal view that counts. It's not a vote on adult leaders. And while people can differ on this view significantly, what we found is that adults in the scouting community and teens and all others agreed that youth should not be denied the benefits of scouting. Our membership standards have always been about leadership, and it was never the intent, I believe, of this organization to prevent young people from being part of this organization. We all know this. Kids belong in the scouting program and are better off in the scouting program. Whatever happens with respect to the vote, we ask you to respect the opinions of others and continue to serve kids. Thank you for being with us this evening, and I look forward to seeing you all in May. And now I'm going to turn it over to Nathan Rosenberg.
Thanks, Wayne. First of all, good evening to everyone, and again, share with Wayne our gratitude for you taking time to be with us and to be part of this dialogue. Unfortunately, as Wayne said, with over 1,000 people on the telephone line, we won't be able to directly interact, but we will collect your questions and respond to them later on. As Wayne said, this is probably the most difficult undertaking, the most difficult question that we've ever dealt with, certainly in my experience, both professionally and personally. We came into the room as a group of officers, volunteers, just like most of you on this call. We listened to the data. We listened to what moms and dads of young scouts had to say. We listened to what scouts themselves had to say, what the American public had to say, what National Executive Board members, what National Advisory Board members, what people from our regions, from our areas, from virtually every council, as you'll hear in a little while, had to say on this issue. And after looking at all the data, after understanding all these views and checking our own hearts, and by the way, in that room, every point of view and every position was represented also, we came together unanimously to support this resolution, and we hope by the end of this evening you can support it also. In the end, the committee decided that this resolution is really the best option for scouting.
Now, throughout the presentation, what I'm going to do is, obviously we can't play the entire hour presentation. You can see it for yourself online. It's been made available to all the delegates nationwide. What I'm going to do is I want to address roughly 10 statements, 10 arguments, 10 themes that were brought up and really address them in a different light. First of all, it's important to understand that the BSA relied upon polling numbers of the general public and attitudes of people outside the Boy Scouts of America. Okay? Now, they took polling data from everywhere, Scoutmasters, Scout, youth, parents, whatnot, but in the end, it appears that they have listened, they've listened to everyone, but they've actually done what's consistent with the general public, not with what's consistent in the scouting movement itself or in the scouting family. They've looked at the polling data on gay marriage in the general public. They looked at the polling data on whether people think that homosexuality is right or wrong in the general public, and they found those numbers very persuasive. They were intellectually honest in the sense that they did present data that did not seem to support the conclusion that we should do this. 58% of all of those in the scouting community sees the prohibition of open homosexuals as part of a core value of the Boy Scouts of America. And so also the question was asked, if this decision was made to allow open homosexuality, could you in good faith continue? And as you can see, about a third of the people said they could not continue. About another third said that they can continue, and then a third said that they're not sure. Now, the not sures, that's pretty significant because those really add up to be more, those are people that they're not sure if they can continue. And this is done when they were considering the local option, okay? We don't have a local option. The option that we have now is nothing. It is you must accept openly gay boys in your troop, in your Cub Scout pack. Not boys that have a same-sex attraction, okay, because that's going on right now. Many of you, for those of us that have been veterans in the program, been in Order of the Arrow, there are leaders around in scouting that have a same-sex attraction. And for those of us that have been around, we kind of know who they are. But they're discreet, they're personal, they're private, they're appropriate, and they're not acting out in front of kids. And what the irony of this whole thing is that every article I've ever seen in the newspaper says, oh, scouting is banning gays. But yet all I can see on TV, on CNN, and all these shows are young men and leaders in uniform saying they're gay, but yet they've been in the scouting movement for many, many years. Well, what happened? Well, what happened is they went from having a same-sex attraction to being openly gay. That is the promotion of politics and the flaunting of sexuality. That's what openly gay means. That's exactly what it means. Now, some will argue, oh, it's just showing me that I have my spouse in my picture in my wallet. No, look, you look at anything that has the title gay on it. Look at a gay blog. Look at a gay website. Look at a gay parade. Look at a gay magazine, a gay movie. It doesn't matter what it is. I can guarantee you it's inappropriate for children because of the content is always hypersexualized, always involves some form of partial nudity, always involves the promotion of sexuality, homosexuality. Okay? And it also involves promoting a leftist political agenda on social issues. That's pretty consistent throughout. Homosexuality has always been with us since the beginning of time. And in fact, Scouts don't discriminate based upon sexual orientation. It says so right in the application. They're not asking you if you're gay, if you're identified as a transgender, whatever it is. They're not asking you that at all. So the issue is behavior and conduct. And that's what it means to be open. To be open necessarily means behavior and conduct and speech that brings the issue out into the light. Now, this I find to be the most significant and also, to their credit, the most sobering but most honest slide that was presented in the presentation. It shows that if the change is made, upwards from 200 to 400,000 people will leave scouting. Now, there's approximately 2.6 million young people in scouting and approximately 1 million adults in scouting. So this represents and I think these are very conservative numbers, frankly. The LDS alone represents about 400,000 persons. So these are very conservative numbers. And I think that the real numbers are probably somewhere between 500 to 700,000 over about a 3-year period, in my estimation, and the estimation of others. Also, a significant financial loss, upwards of $30 million over the annual average budget of about $300,000. So very significant financial loss compared to no change, which there'll be continued membership loss across all regions, but gradual, very small, compared to the significant loss that will happen. So as you can see here, leadership losses 10 to 15%. Again, I think this is very moderate when you consider all the social problems that Scoutmasters are going to have navigating an openly gay boy. Are we going to set them aside in their own tent? Are we going to have a 3-deep policy where we have to have other adults watching them? All of a sudden, you're treating them differently. The very thing they didn't want, Scoutmasters are going to have to treat them differently because of the fact that Scouting's own numbers show that 70% of all abuse in Scouting comes from boys. It doesn't come from adults. We've seen that in our own midst. And so clearly, this move will increase boy-on-boy sexual contact. And that's an unfortunate thing. So these are stunning losses here, financial losses. And what I believe what will happen is the heart and soul of the human capital in the Boy Scouts of America will just be gutted. It will be gutted. The parents, the Scoutmasters, the church charter group sponsors, when they realize that what they're going to have to do, that they're being forced to allow any openly gay boy to join their troop and be a part as an openly gay boy, okay? And it's very hard to have behavioral standards when you have a boy who's openly gay. That's the difference between the old and new policy. Is the old policy allowed a young person that might have thought they had a same-sex attraction or had one simply be apart, but now we're talking about openly gay, and that's a very different thing. Also, interestingly enough, Scouting is divided into 4 major regions. Of the 4 regions, 3 of the regions did not want the change. Only one region, the Northeast, wanted the change. So the question is, why in the world are we doing this if 3 out of the 4 regions did not want change? Here again, we can see the more specific results in the West, the Central, the South, the Northeast, change versus no change. And again, this did not include the results of some major councils like in Tennessee and Utah where they did their own surveys. They did not use the national survey. So these numbers should be actually higher, I believe. So conclusion and recommendation. Well, I don't know why they put the word recommendation up there, because certainly they didn't follow the recommendation of 3 out of 4 of the areas. Now, this question is also rather remarkable. And this was the question of would you, Bob is 15 years old and an openly gay scout in a Boy Scout troop. Is it acceptable or unacceptable for the troop leader to allow Bob to tent with a heterosexual boy on an overnight camping trip? 54% of parents believe that this is acceptable. Now, of course, this hypothetical doesn't give you any real significant facts about what we're talking about. It doesn't define these things. It doesn't talk about behavior. It doesn't talk about what goes on in these situations. That those that are in the scouting community understand the kind of things that go on. And so you see in the scouting community a 63% unacceptable rating amongst for this question. Now, one of the things that they made quite an emphasis on is, again, what the general public thinks about gay rights issues. And they've made the statement that on no issue in American life have attitudes changed as much or as fast as they have on gay rights. Now, this emphasis on polling I find to be remarkable. I find it to be remarkable that they relied upon polling of everybody to make this change. They didn't rely upon the Scout law. They didn't rely upon the Scout oath. They didn't rely upon the general Christian framework of 70% of their chartered partnering organizations, the Mormons, the Methodists, the Catholics, and the Southern Baptists, of which are the larger percentages. They didn't rely upon history or tradition. They relied upon polling and people's opinions, which can change quite a bit. So here's one of the Gallup polls that they showed on whether or not Americans believe that it's acceptable to be open, whether it's morally acceptable to be gay. And as you can see, in 2008, they pointed out when Barack Obama was elected, those numbers changed quite a bit. They also made the point that older people now are more opposed to gay marriage. It's the younger generation that is more in favor of gay marriage. Now, what does gay marriage have to do with scouting? Well, again, it has a lot to do with scouting, again, because I would submit to you that part of being openly gay is a leftist political agenda. I have rarely found any openly gay persons who identify as openly gay who are promoting social issues that are conservative.
To sort of begin, before we get into the results of those surveys, I want to just a minute about the context, the broader context of this issue in the culture. And on no issue in American life have attitudes changed as much or as fast as they have on gay rights. The first slide here is that a majority of Americans believe gay and lesbian relations are morally acceptable. If you go back to 2001, just after President Bush was inaugurated the first time, people said that homosexual relations were morally wrong by 53 to 40%. Those lines crossed in 2008 when President Obama was elected the first time, and today, just 4 years later, those numbers have flipped. 54% say that gay relations are morally acceptable, 42% say they're morally wrong. A majority now also supports gay marriage, and this is an incredibly dramatic slide. Going back to 1996, people said that gay marriages should not be valid by a 68 to 27% margin. Those lines slowly closed in on one another as the years passed. They crossed last year, and now Americans support gay marriage 53 to 46%. The key variable on this issue, as we'll see on a lot of the other questions here, is age. Seniors are now the only age group that opposes gay marriage. Young voters, those age 18 to 29, support it by 2 to 1. Those 30 to 49 supported by 55 to 36%. Those 50 to 64 are basically split, but they now support it 44 to 43%. In a similar survey we did last year, that age group actually opposed gay marriage. So that has changed in just the last year. And then seniors oppose it, but only by 45 to 34%. So you're seeing a dramatic change on these issues primarily related to age.
So, as we can see again, heavy reliance upon polling. The mission of the Boy Scouts is to prepare young people to make ethical and moral choices. Is looking at polling, ladies and gentlemen, and delegates, any way to help young people make choices about ethical and moral choices? And what about this? Scouting has a duty to God. Well, we live in a very secular society. It's not just secular, it's increasingly secular. And what happens when the polls on whether or not we want to be a godly nation, whether we want to affirm God, begin to dwindle as well? Well, according to the way Scouting makes decisions, that's up for grabs as well. And it was up for grabs in Canada in 1998 because they allowed not just homosexuals, but atheists and girls into the program, and it is fundamentally transformed. 75% of the membership is gone. It's not even Boy Scouts Canada. It's Canadian Scouts. And there's a reason for that, is because it's just a collection of young people that are wearing neckerchiefs, if you look at some of the pictures. And so this is a very, very troubling thing to think that polling is the way we're going to guide ourselves in the future on ethical and moral choices. One of the things that was said over and over again is, we listen to you. We listen to you. They kept saying that over and over again. This is the most extensive survey that's ever been done. So much information, so much data, hundreds of thousands of hours. We listen to you. Your views were heard. Your views were recommended. Well, it's like the child who you're talking to, and he says, I'm listening to you, Mom, but he didn't do what you asked him to do. He did what his friends wanted to do outside your house. Why in the world will we make decisions that way? Why in the world why someone outside of our house, outside of the Scouting family, has more authority than what the Scouting family itself says? It makes no sense whatsoever. They listened, but they did not respond. They did not respond, and this decision runs directly afoul of the vast majority of people in the Scouting movement. The chartered partners, it runs afoul of what Scoutmasters want, the volunteers want, and the heart and soul of those that sustain the program. Secondly, an argument is, we want to serve kids. The goal is to serve kids. Kids are better off in the Scouting program. We want to serve the most number of kids. This is all about the kids. We can disagree on the issues, but this is all about serving the kids. Well, if 400,000 members are leaving the BSA, is that any way to serve the most amount of boys? No. And I heard this over and over. We have a policy that serves the most amount of boys because we don't want to exclude anyone from Scouting. Well, they're de facto excluding literally hundreds of thousands of boys from Scouting whose parents aren't going to let them be involved, whose boys themselves will just drop out of the program when they see the changes being made, and who charter partners who will drop their troops and their Cub Scout packs and their Explorer units and their venturing units. That's what will happen. I find it amazing that they say, we want a decision that's going to serve the most amount of boys. 400,000 people leaving is not going to serve the most amount of boys. And so I don't understand that argument at all. They also talk about that no youth should be denied Scouting. We're going to get into that.
Two things were clear in this is that the local choice, that giving the charter partners the choice or giving local councils the choice would have created really a lot of confusion. And that was one of the most common comments we got in the Voice of the Scout survey, in the surveys of our board and the regional and area committees. Secondly, almost everybody, and I looked through all the comments from the board, all the comments from the advisory council, and many of the other ones. Almost everybody's point of view is, we're here to serve kids. We should serve as many kids as we possibly can.
All right, so there you have it. That's part of the rationale. Also, they're going to talk about youth should not be denied Scouting. Well, a lot of youth are going to be denied scouting indirectly because of this. And it's just it's a fake argument. It's a straw man argument. It also assumes that the changes that scouting are making is going to be worth it. Because if you look at what the Canadian Scouts happen, and again, if you open this door and you start governed by polling, our society is going to continue to change. It will continue to change. And you know what? Scouting is probably going to continue to change if this is the way they're making decisions. And so the question becomes, is your child better off in the Canadian Scouts with girls camping and with atheists and with just whoever wants to be a part of openly gay men and women in Canadian Scouts? Would you put your child in Canadian Scouts? No. This is where we're headed, and I'll show you why this is where we're headed in a moment. Major rationale for the policy. Major rationale for the policy. One of the polling questions had to do with a young man earned his Eagle, and during the review, should he be denied his Eagle badge for being gay? All right, and they say that no one wants to kick a boy out of scouting. And this is the question where really, in all categories, this is the only question where everybody agreed, the vast majority. And when I took the polling, I might have even agreed with this because of the fundamental unfairnesses. But this is not the question. We have a saying in the law, it goes like this: hard cases make bad law. They've taken an extreme hard case and they said, oh, here's a place where everyone agrees that we shouldn't deny a young person his Eagle Scout badge just because he's gay. Well, if you've earned a thing, I mean, it depends on the circumstances, but the point is it's just not, here again, unacceptable, 91.6%. So this is what they're rooting their decision on. Now, here's a question they didn't ask. What about the young man who gets his Eagle at age 17, turns 18, guess what? He has to be kicked out of the program now because he's openly gay. The genie does not go back in the bottle. He can't say, I want to be assistant scoutmaster like I did when I turned 18. I got my Eagle, and I said I would like to continue to serve. So I served in Order of the Arrow, and I served as assistant scoutmaster. Can't do that now. They didn't poll on that. They didn't poll on what people thought about kicking a young man out of scouting right after he turns 18. So you can see the moral inconsistency and the moral incoherency of this policy. It really sends a wrong message. Message is it's okay to be openly gay when you're a young person, but when you're an adult, it's not permissible. Really a confusing message for a group whose mission is to help young people understand ethical and moral choices. Wayne Perry, in his initial talk, appeared remotely, and he said, we're not going to allow political agendas in the BSA. But again, I say to you that that's precisely what openly gay means. They're claiming they're going to lock down behavioral standards. They're not going to allow this kind of thing. But look, I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't, the gay community has defined what openly gay means, okay? And for them, it's one and the same, but it's really not, because there are many people who are not identifying as gay, but they are homosexual. They don't want to identify with the left-wing, flaunting, sexual kind of risque movement, but they have a same-sex attraction and they're fine with that. Two separate things. There was also a very big deal made about the fact that the resolution has some really good language. In the whereas clauses, it actually says some very good things. They emphasize the duty to God. They emphasize behavioral standards for young people regarding sex, saying that all sexual activity amongst youth is contrary to the virtues of scouting, okay? Which we would all agree with that. They also affirmed the membership standards for adults will stay the same, okay? But here's the thing, as a lawyer, and this is just the fact, whereas clauses, you know what they are? They're cotton candy. They're nothing. The only thing that matters is 141 words after the whereas clauses, okay, that says, therefore let it be resolved. That is the policy. Whereases are not policy, and they will go into the memories of history as some propaganda thing, okay? Whereases are clearing your throat. They're symbolic statements. They are leading up to the actual legally binding language, which affirms none of this, okay? And the LDS, when they issued their statement recently, made a very big deal about the whereas clauses. But apparently their lawyers did not help them understand that whereas clauses are not legally binding. So while we appreciate the Scout Committee's attempt to actually raise these issues and try to assure us that they're going to be great, if they were in the actual policy and not the whereases, I would have felt a whole lot better. And of course, one of the best whereas clauses is all sexual activity among youth is contrary to the virtues of scouting. Okay, that's interesting. Sexual activity. What about conduct? What about speech? What about discussions? What about symbols? What about, there's a lot of things that aren't activity that still communicate. And so language is one of them. And so we're saying on one hand we want all sexual activity as contrary to the virtues of scouting, but yet we're requiring open homosexuality. Okay, part of the problem with this whole thing is the hypersexuality of our young people. I mean, and now scouting is now caving to that hypersexuality where kids shouldn't even be talking about any of this stuff. I mean, it should be completely out of their world. This should be a time where they're educating themselves and learning about relationships and trying to understand what's right and wrong. They should not be engaging in open homosexuality at any age under 18, in my judgment. And it just creates an enormous amount of problems. If they really believe this, they would have not proposed the resolution. They would keep the policy the same. If all sexual activity among youth is contrary to the virtues of scouting, then we should keep the membership policy just like it is. Now, Mr. Rosenberg made a very impassioned plea, and I want to let you hear that. He said that this decision had nothing to do with pressure from the outside, and I want you to hear his...
I think this resolution has gone too far. Some people think the resolution should have gone farther to include the changing the standard for adult members. But please know this. As I said, we really did look at as many of the options as we can think of. We talked them through. Wayne Perry literally went around the table and every officer spoke on how he saw the best way forward for the Boy Scouts of America. As Wayne had said back in our meeting in February, all of us gave our personal views on the issue, but that's not what we talked about in April. In April, what we talked about was what was best for the Boy Scouts of America, what was best for the youth of America. We concluded that the option that didn't prevent a scout from participating in scouting, from getting the experience of this great life-changing program, they're the priority. Kids are our priority, period. And we all know the kids are much better off when they stay in scouting. Some people have said that we're changing our membership standards in response to pressure, to political pressure, to outside groups pressure, to donor pressure. And I'm on the committee and I'm engaged as anyone, and I'm going to be just blatantly clear with everybody on this call. It's not true. It's not true. What we responded to was the input of our members, what we heard from our members, and then we listened and listened really keenly, listened really generously, and decided to act.
We responded to our membership? We didn't respond to our membership. We responded to the general public. We responded to public opinion outside the scouting family. And I find, frankly, the kind of very aggressive disclaimer about not pressure from outside, I find that to be one of the most disingenuous and frankly dishonest statements about this whole presentation. This is all about pressure. That's why within less than a year, they did a 180-degree turn on recommending their membership standards. Because as soon as they affirmed the two-year study last summer, and I'll just tell you the story. I'll tell you why I'm here. Because right across from my office is a little chicken wing place. And last summer I was in that place and I saw Tico Perez, who's a friend of mine. I grew up in scouting with Tico. He was in the lodge chief before I was involved with OA and stuff. And I said, hey, what's going on with the membership thing? I heard about it. I knew there was some stuff brewing. And he said, hey, don't worry, we got this thing locked down. Key 3, we're solid on this. Wayne Perry's LDS, solid guy and not gonna, we're good. He said, but I'll tell you what, we're getting a lot of pressure. We're getting hammered by the culture. We're getting hammered by emails and the gay activists and everybody in the societies screaming at us. And I said, hey, let me create an organization for you. I said, I'll encourage you. We'll give you support. I said, I'll create a national network. I'll get all the groups in the country who support us, including the scouting movement, and you'll hear some positive encouragement if you feel like you're out there on a limb by yourself. We left that meeting. I followed up twice. I sent 2 emails to Tico. I said, tell me what I need to do. Who do I need to talk to? You want emails? You want letters? You want phone calls? Send another email. Send a text. Heard nothing back. Then speed up. 6 months later, I'm in Naples. I'm looking at my phone. Breaking news, NBC. BSA opens it back up again. And I'm like, what in the world just happened? Well, I'll tell you what just happened. When they affirmed their membership policy, the cultural bullies of the day screamed. They screamed, and they put lots of pressure. Bill Gates screamed. Madonna screamed. Hollywood screamed. The White House screamed. And the left in this country went nuts. Now, I know what that's like to have that kind of pressure. It requires some moral fortitude to stand up to it. And the question here is will scouting pass the test of moral fortitude? But to say this had nothing to do with pressure is absolutely dishonest. I mean, they're citing to polls from pressure from the general public. That's pressure. They've received thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of emails over time from people on the other side. And so they're clearly responding to pressure. We would not be here if this was not the case.
And that brings to mind the Boy Scout motto, be prepared. Life is full of changes, and change never stops. And we must be prepared to accept the challenges a changing society can bring upon us. We prepared by listening, dialoguing, and acting. The issues before us as dedicated supporters and participants in scouting is certainly a serious and compelling challenge. The resolution Nathan presented earlier requires all of us to think about the organization we love, not just for the present day, but consider as well all of the tomorrows to come and what role will the Boy Scouts of America be. Countless hours and resources and passionate soul-searching by a ton of people. All scouting participants and supporters were given to this process, resulting in the resolution we've discussed this evening. After exhaustive debate among the entire realm of scouting and personal introspection from all, I firmly believe the resolution as proposed is the correct approach as the BSA navigates toward the future.
We need to be prepared for the change, and we need to be brave for the change. This gentleman, Tom Buffenbarger, encourages us to do. These leaders that are promoting this have totally bought in to the inevitability argument. This is inevitable. Well, let me say something to the delegates watching this video right now. Open homosexuality in the Boy Scouts of America is not inevitable. It is not. This is a winnable battle. We can preserve the fundamental core values of scouting, and it does not have to change with the rest of society. This is an unprincipled way of leading. When you put your finger in the air, I mean, it's what politicians do, the kind of politicians that we don't admire very much. They put their finger in the air and they say, which way's the polling going? And that's the way they take their stand. That's not the way we need to govern in scouting. Teaching young people. It does not take bravery to go along with the flow of what appears to be the emerging majority. That's not bravery. Okay? Bravery is standing up for what's right in the face of opposition when you might be in the minority. That's bravery. And what are we teaching the young people? What are we teaching young people who are trying to teach to be brave, and yet we don't have the courage as adults ourselves to stand up to the cultural bullies who are trying to beat us down and try to critical our values? What are we saying? We're saying, young people, you know what? When it's unpopular, just change your values. Change your morals. Go with the flow. That's what we're teaching young people. As adults, that's what we're teaching young people. And it's not the paradigm that scouting should be looking at. Now, I have written a document entitled An Open Letter to the BSA Delegates, 10 Reasons to Vote No. It's a legal and ethical analysis of the proposed resolution to allow open homosexuality in the Boy Scouts. And I want to briefly present to you the 10 reasons why I think that delegates should vote no. Hopefully you can get this on our website at onmyhonor.net. You can download the PDF or go to the page that talks about legal reasons. First of all, the proposal is logically incoherent and morally and ethically inconsistent. We've talked about this. Okay? 2 messages, 2 sets of morals. A member that mostly in the scouting community thought that the membership standards regarding homosexuality was a key part of the values of scouting. So we're teaching 2 separate things. Also, when the young man turns 18, he's kicked right out of the program. He can't be involved anymore. And so really, what this is a de facto allowing open homosexuality in the whole program. Because I can promise you the vast majority of scoutmasters who are left after this change is made, they're not going to kick that boy out. They're not. So what you'll have is a de facto transmission of the open homosexual principle into the whole program, almost immediately, and certainly over the following 3 years. Opening the Boy Scouts to boys who claim to be openly gay, are sexually attracted to other boys, and are openly identify themselves as gay will inevitably create an increase in boy-on-boy sexual contact, which will further result in public scandal to the BSA, not to mention the tragedy of countless boys who experience sexual, physical, and psychological abuse. Ladies and gentlemen, it's hard for me not to get emotional on this point. But if even one boy is going to be violated, one boy is going to be violated and have his life turned around and sent another direction, that is enough to not adopt this policy. And shame on the national leaders that would ignore the hundreds and thousands of boys who will be violated over time. They know this, and they've made no mention whatsoever. And I have to control myself here because I get very upset on this point. They've made no mention in their report whatsoever, and they are aware that this will increase. I was never concerned about adults, frankly, because we have the 2 deep policy, and it's very strict, and it's been relatively effective. Yes, there's ways to get around it, but for the most part, it's an ethos that we've developed in the scouting family, and it works. But boys, you can't do that with. Boys run off in the forest. They wander off by themselves. Things happen with the boys. You can't regulate them the same way. They know this is going to increase sexual contact amongst boys, and not a word was said about it in any of their documents. Number 3, the proposal forces and requires every chartered scouting unit, regardless of religious convictions, to facilitate open homosexuality amongst boys in the program. And eventually, I predict to you, activists will systematically go around and they will target troops that try to stay back, that try to not abide by the policy. And we're going to talk about what happens to troops that don't abide by the policy. But there's no local option. At least the last local option was a better proposal. I mean, some Baptist leaders said, this is a better proposal. No, it's not. I mean, at least we could have established our own BSA versus Dale principle of association independently as an organization and various churches. Now we have to do this. You have no choice. Your only choices are you be dischartered from the national organization or you have lawsuits filed against you. Number 4, if the proposal is enacted, it will gut a major percentage of human capital in the BSA and utterly devastate the program financially, socially, and legally. And we've talked about that. Scouting's own numbers say this. They know this is going to literally devastate the program. The human capital is the most valuable resources we have. The men, the women, the parents that devote their time day after day, week after week, and we know it's only 3 hours a week, right, to scouting, that's going to be gone. A major valuable resource, the most precious resource we have, much of it will be gone. Number 5, the resolution robs parents of the sole authority to raise issues of sex and sexuality with their kids. To be openly gay means to communicate about it. That's what it means. And so instead of you as a parent deciding when is the proper time to talk about sexuality and aberrant forms of sexuality, now it's going to be introduced around a campfire, in a tent, and in various places, and you no longer have the exclusive jurisdiction to do that. Frankly, for me and my sons, we're not going to put our sons in a program that does that. Number 6, the proposed policy directly contradicts the BSA's comprehensive 2-year study from 2010 to 2012, which unanimously concluded that prohibiting open and avowed homosexuality was the absolute best policy for the Boy Scouts. Number 7, the proposed resolution leaves scouting units no options or no legal protection if they refuse to allow open homosexuality in the boys in their unit. And really, there's 2 things that will happen. Let's say that a unit says, well, we disagree and we're just going to continue to go on as a chartered unit. Well, eventually, it's just a matter of time. There will be a systematic targeting, I predict, by those activists that oppose the existing membership policy. Well, they will plant a 16, a 17-year-old openly gay activist, and they will see what happens. And if that boy's not accepted, either BSA National will pull the charter of the unit, or they'll be sued under a non-discrimination clause, be it a county one like we have here in Orange County, Florida, or under a state non-discrimination clause. And so that will be the results. BSA versus Dale is no longer there. The Supreme Court says as long as you say that your values and the values you're trying to teach young people, okay, the young people is the focus there, all right, that and as long as you're teaching that that clean and reverent and morally straight is inconsistent with homosexuality, then you have the right to associate or disassociate with folks based upon that criteria. And you're not violating the Equal Protection Clause or something else. Well, we're no longer doing that. No longer doing that. We're retreating completely from that principle, and that will remove the protection of the United States Supreme Court, a very hard-fought and one case that protects us as a movement now of troops and units and packs. Number 9, we talked about this, the whereas clauses in the resolution are symbolic and not a part of the actual policy. And then number 10, the top BSA leaders completely ignored the collective wisdom of the rank and file scouting members when they proposed this resolution. I almost went nuts when Rosenberg said, oh, we listened to you, we responded to the scouting family. No, he didn't. No, they didn't. They responded to somebody else, but it was not the scouting family. The scouting family overwhelmingly does not want this. And yet they're doing it anyway. We can only pray that the delegates vote no. So here's the comparison within less than a year between the 2 policies. How did we get here? How did we get here? Now, one of the things that was said by Lyle Knight, who is a vice president of human relations, and I think we have a clip here for this, but he says, for today, just for today, I think this is the right move. Just for today, this is the right move. My question is, what about tomorrow? What about tomorrow? What about tomorrow after the first change is made and all the conservatives leave? How easy of a resolution do you think it would be to have homosexuality throughout the entire program? Pretty easy. Pretty easy. When all the Mormons, all the Southern Baptists, all the conservative Methodists, all the Catholics that are pro-family, when those folks leave the program, I can guarantee you it'll be a real easy fix. When Tico Perez is gone, when Wayne Brock is gone, when all these people now that are there in just a couple of years, they won't be there for a long time. When they're gone, something else will happen.
So I would assure everyone on this call, whatever your personal opinion is, someone at that table shared that opinion. But at this last meeting, we talked only about what was best for scouting. Now, I personally support this resolution, although I've already been told it didn't go far enough, and I've also been told it went too far. But for today, just today, I think it's the right move, because we lacked consensus on any of the issues other than the youth issue.
So again, what he's saying is that the only consensus that they had was on the youth issue. To deny, we're not denying anybody scouting youth. It's when they act outward. All these Eagle Scouts you see, they've been denied their Eagle badges. Well, you know what they did? They proposed an Eagle project that was a gay lesbian board at school that promoted, messages on bullying and diversity and all that. And they said, no, this is a political statement. You need to go back and do another Eagle project. Well, then he complained. Okay? All these people you see on CNN saying, oh, we've been booted out. No, not because they had a same-sex attraction or homosexual. It's because they acted outwardly. They started collecting petitions to change the BSA rule in uniform, in the program. They begin to flaunt their sexuality with their partner or whatever it is. Those are the things that got them in trouble. Those are the things that got them in trouble. today, just for today. Again, I say to you, as we close, my concern is not what's just for today. What about tomorrow? Because if this is the way we're making decisions now, putting our finger in the air, seeing where the polling's going, not what's right or wrong, but seeing where the polling is going, there's no end to this. There's no end to this. I think the person that I heard summarize this the best is the founding scoutmaster of our troop, my troop personally, and that is Chris Collier. He said this, scouting is undergoing the test of moral relativism. Scouting is undergoing the test of moral relativism. And the only question that I have is, will it pass or will it fail? And for those delegates that are watching this presentation, you have the decision in your hands as to whether this wonderful movement, this robust movement that has turned literally millions of boys into responsible fathers, responsible husbands, and responsible citizens, will become a weak, anemic relic in human history, or whether it will continue to be the finest youth organization on the face of the earth. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for your time, and God bless you.